Hello, I am doing a presentation on microchimerism, specifically fetal and maternal microchimerism. Bobby Mercero for my Bio 30 class. Just want to go over a couple things. For the purpose of this presentation, I'll be calling the pregnant and mother or maternal body. Be trying to mostly refer to the children as offspring and fetus. I understand that some people prefer other pronouns or other terms. And I also just want to mention that I mention abortion and miscarriage, and I always respect people's pronouns, but for the sake of biology, I will be referring to them as these terms. So I like to begin by breaking down a word. I just think it's a really helpful tool. So chimera. Chimera. Talk about chimera first. It's a thing. It's actually made of many parts. I just thought this was kind of cute. It's a mythical creature, so it has a head of a lion, a goat's body, and a serpent's tail. And then micro is actually an adjective, and it's just describing something that's actually super, super small. I'm sure you've heard of microscopic. And that's blood cells, skin cells, stuff that you need a microscope for. So, what is microchimerism? Chimerism is when we find cells that are genetically different than our own, found within our own bodies. I will be talking about natural microchimerism. It is when a small concentration of cells has transferred across the placenta, also called specifically fetal and maternal microchimerism. Actually a bidirectional thing that is asymmetrical. And bidirectional means that it goes from fetus to mother and mother to fetus. Asymmetrical in the fact that most of the cell transfer is actually going into the mother. It's not the only source of microchimerism. Organ transplants are another way to introduce genetically unique cells to the body. So, in microchimerism will affect all or many human beings. Because it's something to do with the placenta, it affects everything that develops one. These are called eutherian mammals. They're also known as placentalia. And they're with the phenotypes jaws, feet, ankle, teeth, and develop a placenta. Eutherian mammals developed approximately 93 million years ago, so it can be predicted that microchimerism has been with us that entire time, or at least developing alongside us, which I think is pretty cool. And since I described phenotypes, I think that this relates to Unit 2.3, talking about phenotypes. So, talk about the placenta. We know about the placenta. It's the only organ that we have that has grown life, is used, and then discarded repeatedly sometimes. It allows for transfer of oxygen, nutrients, and waste from mother to fetus, fetus to mother, but it doesn't allow direct blood transfer. So if you look, veins come here, creates oxygen and the waste, placenta. So oxygen, nutrients come here, fuse across, and then the baby's blood absorbs them and is taken down the umbilical to the fetus. So yeah, the placenta acts as almost a security station to make sure that there's no direct blood-to-blood transfer. And yeah, then the umbilical cord attaches to the placenta, which takes the products to the fetus or takes the waste up here and across to the mother's blood to discard it. So what you may or may not be surprised to know is that there's no such thing as a perfect system. So the placenta system is not foolproof. And this is why we are finding cells that are genetically unique in our own body. Like most things in life, error is possible. What you define as error is, of course, different. These cells are gaining access to our bodies by crossing the placenta. And this is related to topic 4.4. It's in development. So it's coming here. These stem cells are seeing the placenta to the baby, and they're also crossing placenta into the mother. It'd be helpful to think, I think personally, of other ways that the fetus has influenced the mother that we know of. Fetus basically invades, but no, it does literally invade the endometrium lining and protects itself by secreting hormones. So it protects itself from the mother's T cells, immune cells, and stuff like that. This is related to Unit 4.4 embryonic development. How do these cells survive for so long? It's not like these muscle cells are transferring from the mother's muscle to across the placenta into the baby and then just finding a muscle to live in. It's actually stem cells. So mother stem cells and baby stem cells seeing the placenta and basically finding sources. So they'll settle in muscles, they'll settle in fat, they'll settle in cartilage, heart, nerve, blood, and then reproduce for an basically indeterminate amount of time. This is related to Unit 1.1 and 1.6 cell replication and cell structures. So, do the scientists find the microchimeric cells in order to do all these studies? Well, it's a lot easier to find male DNA in a woman's body. XY in a female is XX. It's not only way, but it is easiest. And in a case of a scientific study, efficiency is key. So it is much more efficient to find very distinct chromosome. And so they do it this way. But they can also find, when a woman has had a daughter, for an example, they had a 47-year-old woman and they found her mother's microchimeric cells in her body at 47 years old. And I think that this relates to Unit 1.5 DNA structure and function because I'm just thinking about the chromosome karyotypes and, that they have to lay it all out in order to find the XX and XY. I assume that's how they do it. So, what kind of microchimeric cells might you find in your body? If you've ever been pregnant, you will find your mother cells. This is maternal microchimerism. Our subsequent or second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth pregnancy for your mother, you also find your sibling cells. This is a much smaller concentration, and all these cells will be passed from your mother to you. So if you look here for a second, for the first child, the first offspring, their cells are orange and the mother's are purple. So there's a bidirectional transfer here. So the mother's body holds onto these orange cells, and then she's pregnant again, offspring here. And as you can see, the queen is sending lots of cells up to the mother. Mother is sending full and a little bit of orange down here to fetus number two. So you can see 1, 2, 3, for example, concentrations of sibling cells. If you have been pregnant, you will find much smaller concentrations or none of your mother cells. You will probably not find any of your sibling cells, and you will find varying concentrations of cells from each of your pregnancies. This is fetal microchimerism. And actually, even if a fetus is miscarried or aborted, there is a strong possibility a smaller concentrations of cells can be found in the mother. Though it's seen and studied so far that these cells do not have the longevity of a full-term offspring, and it's assumed that this is due to the smaller number of cells successfully transferred. And interesting fact, in my opinion, if a woman has a surgical abortion versus a chemical abortion, she will actually have more fetal microchimerism cells in her body versus the chemical abortion. So I just want to look at this picture that I made based off of Lee Nelson's animation for her presentation. So this is Jane's mother, the grandmother. So Jane's cells are these green squares. Jane's mother are these red circle, or I tried circles. Um, so storing some of Jane's cells. Jane is storing some of her mother's cells, but then Jane becomes pregnant, and the fetus's star cells kick out of the mother cells. None of the grandmother cells are transferred to the fetus, but Some of Jane's cells are kept in this fetus. Why will you have a smaller concentration of your mother's cells if you have been pregnant? I just want to think about our immune system. It attacks viruses, unhealthy cells, and sometimes even itself. It's called an autoimmune disease, and I will be bringing this up again later. So, to put it bluntly, the microchimeric cells fighting, quote unquote, fighting each other for dominance. Why do they fight each other? The fetal microchimeric cells are infiltrating the mother's body for a reason, and that reason is to allocate resources for itself and to make the mother's body more hospitable to itself. Best way to ensure that it gets what it wants, to get rid of as much competition as possible. That's why, with each pregnancy, the concentrations of each offspring's microchimeric cells will vary. The offspring cells will quote unquote battle any other microchimeric cells in the mother to ensure its own benefit. Studies so far have recorded the current fetus actually doesn't win each time. It seems to be determined by the quote unquote strength of each fetus's immune response. But so far, it has been recorded that the fetus's cells do dominate the grandmother cells in the maternal body, and it will also dominate any of the mother's siblings' microchimeric cells that are found in her body. Why do the cells cross at all? Microchimeric cells cross, like I said, to allocate resources. It's been discovered that fetal microchimeric cells have the power to influence milk production, maternal bonding. They even have the power to influence somatic and autonomic systems. So far, we understand that there is more microchimeric travel to the mother because the fetus needs to make the mother's body more hospitable, not other way around. Look at this. Like a tug of war between the offspring and the mother. The offspring's interest, the current offspring's interest, is upregulation of neuroendocrine systems. It helps with bonding and parental investment. This is the thyroid to increase heat production and goes into the breast to increase milk production, even goes into the immune system to kind of evade detection and destruction. That's for the fetus and for the microchimeric cells. And then there's the mother's interest. Her interest in the brain is to, keep everything under control. And it's not just for this fetus, but for every fetus, because the mother, genetically down, written in the code, wants to spread as much as her DNA as possible. So, investing everything into one fetus is not the way to do that. Also, thyroid, she wants to be more comfortable and burning herself up or cooling herself off too much, that's not the way to ensure her genes get passed on more than once. And again, so it seems like the mother is more interested in passing on her genes as many times as possible, and the fetus is almost like this selfish guy who wants to get as much as possible right now. They have like a balancing fighting act against each other. Their immune systems have ways to defend against each other, and it's pretty interesting. I think that this relates to Unit 3.4 and 3.6, the nervous system and hormonal influence. So, where will cells be found in the body? Well, since the cells, especially fetal, are trying to allocate resources and influence the somatic and autonomic systems for its own benefit, be found in the highest concentrations in glands, systems, and tissues that influence hormones or that influence other somatic systems. So, like blood, thyroid, intestines, liver, pancreas, reproductive tissues like cervix and endometrial, wounds, bone marrow, breast, skin, and brain. Not the only places, but that covers quite a bit of it. So, and I think that this covers 0.6 and 3.7, hormones and somatic systems. So, is the benefit of microchimerism? Well, its influence on the mother has own well-being in mind, but actually by having its own well-being in mind, it's passively helping the mother, passively being like no effort really made. Um, Fetal microchimeric cells have been found actually at cesarean sites, phytokeratin and collagen to help facilitate wound healing. It has actually been actively tracked, migrating to sites of inflammation and wounds in the mother, and then helping the healing process. It's also been recorded to lend stem cells in a way that temporarily reverses or halts the effects of the mother's age, because as we age, our stem cells go through changes, and this fetus's young stem cells go in and they kind of counteract that. I think that this really relates to Bio30 topics because it describes the chemical and cellular effects and process behind fetal microchimerism, and it describes the way fetal stem cells are changing into, different protein markers to help heal the wounds. What's the benefit? Again, multiple sclerosis actually has been recorded to have fewer relapses during pregnancy, especially the third trimester. It's actually been a really long recorded phenomenon that women with rheumatoid arthritis would have bouts of relief from the disease while pregnant, only to have a flare up once birth has concluded. We now have studies that conclude that this is partially or very often due to the effect that fetal cells have on the mother's body, going in and healing, going to sites of inflammation and producing these things to help with healing and relief. It's actually noted that 50 to 75% of women have relief from rheumatoid arthritis during pregnancy. It's honestly something that they have noticed for quite a long time. Also, the fetal cells could have an immune reaction to something that the mother system handles poorly. So, because the stem cells, the fetal microchimeric cells, are going into the body, they are young, they're virile, they are ready to go, and they settle, say, in bone marrow and become immune cells. There's some sort of virus that comes in. It's not only the mother cells that are attacking the virus, it's also the fetus's cells. And so now you basically got like double team working on destroying this invader. So continued, it's actually these are some of the actual scientific studies that I mentioned earlier where they had a source of women who had sons. And so they noticed that actually in thyroid cancers, fetal cells are found more frequently in the blood of healthy controls when compared to patients with thyroid cancer. And as well, fetal cells are found more frequent in the blood and tissue of healthy controls when compared to people with breast cancer, women with breast cancer. Especially noted that they noted that if these cancers have estrogen and progesterone receptors, it really impacts. If you have more fetal cells, it'll be beneficial. Also, which I think is super interesting, is that the fetal cells are found more frequently in healthy controls in compared to patients with Alzheimer's. If this somehow has some way of being beneficial to stop Alzheimer's, like Alzheimer's is such a destructive autoimmune type brain disease that if we could find a way to make this, stop Alzheimer's, I'm all for it. It also helps with milk production, and it's been found to help with bonding by going into the brain and influencing oxytocin release before and after pregnancy, thermal regulation for preferable conditions for the fetus. So yeah, if you look at this photo here, it's beneficial, production, ding, thermoregulation, harmful. We're going to talk about that in a second. Um, Neutral. Also, lots of these things just kind of chill in the body and have absolutely no effect whatsoever. Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting. Let's talk about how it relates. Unit 3.6, 3.7, 4.4, hormonal influence, thyroid, embryonic development. So yeah, the oxytocin, these cells go into the brain and posterior pituitary and help with the secretion of oxytocin and after. So, responses, peripheral nervous system, how on a hormonal cellular level, the mother is severely influenced. So, what is the downside? As amazing and beneficial as microchimerism is, it does have a pretty serious downside, and this next part will be pretty stat heavy. So, like I mentioned before, autoimmune diseases. Microchimerism has been linked to many of these. Seems contradictory, but the same diseases that microchimerism has been known to help, it actually can also cause. So cervical cancer, fetal tissues is found more in the patients than healthy control. DNA is found in rheumatoid arthritis nodules and is found more frequently in the blood of patients with rheumatoid arthritis than the controls. Lung patient Lung cancer patients have been found more frequently to have fetal cells in the diseased tissue than other healthy tissue in the same patient. Colon cancer has been found to have more fetal cells in their blood. Melanoma, skin cancer, fetal cells have been found more frequently in the diseased tissue than when compared to benign or healthy. There's actually this thing called polymorphic eruption of pregnancy, also known as PEP. It's these benign, so non-deadly, very uncomfortable, itchy red lesions that develop during pregnancy. It's noted that most of PEP cases occur during the first pregnancy, and overall incidence is 1 out of 160 to 300 pregnancies. That is not very many. Um, that's like a lot. Like even in a small village with only 800 people, that's like 3 to 2, 2.5. Anyway, however, with multiple gestation, it's found to be 8 to 12 times higher. So, that that 3 to 2 is now 16 and like 24 or more, 36. That's a lot. Studies have found that fetal DNA is actually detected in the tissue of these lesions, and that no fetal cells have been detected in healthy controls. Ignore this part. Did some more research, and it actually affects the first pregnancy as well. So, to explain this, I think we need to discuss two things that we have already mentioned, but going a little bit immune system responses and organ transplants. So, system response, the body can identify antigens on harmful tissues and are part of the very complex human immune response. Well, the system knows what is self and what is other. Antigens help the immune system identify germs, poisons, and sometimes even cancers. This is reminding me of, I can't remember which unit, but when we talked about blood alleles and stuff. Right? Organ transplant. So I'm sure whether it's been a movie, a book, or just the internet, we've heard of needing a match for an organ transplant. That, even your sister or your mother or your father could not be a perfect match, that only your twin could possibly be a perfect match, more than possibly, like definitely perfect match, but having to go all over the world to try and find an organ transplant. This is because the human body will detect that as other. And then since it sees it as other, it will attack it. This will cause the body to reject the organ. It can happen immediately, 3 to 6 months later, or it can be a gradual process that slowly disorders the organ over time. They have drugs to kind of halt this immune response and protect the organ from the body. But I just want you to look at this photo here and remember what it looks like, this red, puffy rejection. Guys had a face transplant here and it's being rejected. I just want you to remember what that looks like. So, how does an immune response and organ rejection relate to microchimerism? Well, these markers that help the immune system identify what is other and what is self do so by, of course, comparing it to itself. It's actually been discovered that the more alike these fetal cells are to their mother, the more likely they are to result in various autoimmune diseases. So if you look at this photo here, a normal immune response, an inviter like a virus or something enters the body. The immune cells create lymphocytes and create antibodies the immune cells called lymphocytes create antibodies to fight the invader. So they attack, it dies, it's gone. Autoimmune disease, and this is the one we're going to be talking about, is when your immune system creates antibodies that attack your own cells. And this is because a foreign substance resembles bodily substances. So makes sense then that the more alike these markers are on the fetus's cells, the more likely that when triggered, the mother's body will attack itself when it's trying to get rid of this. No, like I said, I think it seems backwards. It's not something that even the scientists thought was the case, but it makes sense now that you know about it. They don't know exactly how, uh, or what triggers it, but these fetal cells can go undetected in the mother system for decades. They're just existing, reproducing in various tissues, and then something not quite known yet causes them to be detected. And this results in the body attacking the microchimeric cells because they're so similar. Now, one example of microchimerism causing an autoimmune disease is Lee Nelson's study of scleroderma. Now, if you remember his face, I asked you to remember, um, look at her hands. They're red, they're puffy. They look almost like they're being rejected. It's like she had like cut here and attached these digits, and now they're being rejected. So Lee Nelson actually noticed that scleroderma looked very similar to organ rejection. So she and her team got look at the affected tissues, and they actually found high concentrations of fetal DNA in the affected area. So she concluded that these fetal cells are a cause of these cases of autoimmune reaction. And this would make sense on why approximately 80% of all autoimmune cases are women, especially women in their 40s, 50s, and 60s after reproducing age. So yeah, it's starting to be linked as a big part of the reason why there's these ratios 10 to 1, 9 to 1, 9 to 1, 9 to 1, 3 to 1, 2.5 to 1, 2 to 1. Even 2 to 1, it doesn't sound like a lot. That is a lot. I just want to remind you that, well, as scary as this might be, everybody wants to, and not everybody wants to, but if you've had kids, it might be scary to think that you could have these cells in you just waiting to go off, but it's actually not all bad. There was a study done. They found one offspring had diabetes type 1 and other siblings didn't, and they actually assumed that the mother cells be embedded in the pancreas, causing an immune response in the affected diabetic offspring. And subsequently, the autoimmune response would be causing the pancreas to not be able to produce insulin. They actually found the opposite. In both children, the type 1 diabetic and the non diabetic, they found the maternal microchimeric cells, but in the diabetic offspring, the mother cells were actually trying to reproduce or trying to produce insulin and actually trying to regenerate the tissues around. So they predicted that it would be the cause, but it's actually not. It's actually kind of beautiful. It was trying to help, trying to help. I think that's pretty amazing. The cells are obviously just doing what they're made to do. They're cells that are in the pancreas trying to produce insulin because they know how, but the diseased pancreas tissues don't know how. Still, and on it. So, what does this mean? All of this evidence of microchimerism in humans causing good and bad things, why scientists lately have begun to completely reconsider the reasons behind autoimmune diseases, especially in women who have given birth. Previously thought to be affected by menopause and its changes on the ever mysterious female hormones, rather we can look at perhaps our microscopic hitchhikers being a serious contributing factor. Actually, further studies do need to be done. Most of these discoveries have been only from 1990s till today. That's only 5 years longer than I have been alive. Um, Scientists like Lee Nelson are actually fascinated by microchimerism and are super dedicated to studying its causes and effects, with the hopes that by unlocking all the answers with fetal and maternal microchimerism, we could actually use it to our benefit. What possible benefits? Well, we could actually be successful by sending enough microchimeric cells into a diseased pancreas. We could regenerate its ability to produce insulin, or that hyperthyroidism can be cured by sending healthy cells to stop the immune response and the negative feedback loops. Possibilities are truly endless when we fully understand what is happening behind this fascinating process. Like Alzheimer's disease, that just amazing. I would really like to see microchimerics solved, and I would like to understand the negative effects and um, figure out a way to stop it. I know that our bodies have very specific things for the things they do. Like I'm thinking about sickle cell anemia. When it's being carried recessive, it causes a resistance to malaria. But I still think because so many women are disproportionately suffering, if we could solve it and maybe use it to our benefit, I think that would be great. I'm really excited to see where the research goes in the future. Um, I would really like to know if we can use it to help Alzheimer's patients who are already beginning to suffer from Alzheimer's, because Alzheimer's personally affected my great grandmother, and I know that really broke my grandma's heart. So I just want to say, do not be afraid. It may be unsettling, but there are so many benefits, and it's truly fascinating. So, you could think about how you connected to your mother, your children, or even your siblings, and trust in the fact that this is something that has a purpose and has been developing alongside us. And without it, well, we wouldn't have, no, it wouldn't have influenced our milk production, influenced our mother's bondings with ourselves or our bonding with our offspring. So it's just a really important thing, and just faith that the technology of today and tomorrow can help us understand how to use microchimerism and how it works. Even find treatments or cures for autoimmune diseases.